Mr. Lowe, let's go back to you. You acknowledged in your written testimony and in response to some questions from Senator Hawley about the scenario in which you type in 2 plus 2. And if I'm understanding your argument correctly, you're saying that's totally fine for them to say, yeah, the answer to that is 4, rather than just including a series of links to websites that have calculators attached to them. But then when it comes to other searches, including, in many cases, a search for a local business of some sort or another, then it might be different. And in some cases, you might end up with search results that are degraded in terms of their value to the searcher, or in other cases might be deceptive. So help walk me through what Yelp considers deceptive or a degradation of the quality of the search result.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. It's not, as Senator Hawley just said, I think the devil's in the details, and I think this is why antitrust law is important, and we support the use of antitrust law to balance. And I think in the case of the Federal Trade Commission's investigation and ultimate conclusion, this was frankly what I think they got tripped up on, is this idea that the introduction of these answer boxes, also known as one boxes, did have anti-competitive effects, which were acknowledged, but on balance, they found that it led to consumer benefit. And I think you need to engage in sort of vertical specific balancing. So I've talked to economists about this topic a lot. I think the one way you could imagine it, sort of a spectrum of, on one side is sort of immutable fact-based information, commodity, utility-like. It's almost analogous to the flashlight example in the App Store that was discussed earlier. On the other side is sort of the most subjective information you can imagine. And in the case of local search, the core information that is surfaced is this amalgam of user-generated content. And so I think that, asking the question, does it make sense to bypass the entire World Wide Web of candidates for potential relevant results in serving up an answer and having a totally exclusionary box where no other third-party service is allowed to even participate in this merit-based process? I think these are fair questions to raise.
Tell me what Yelp does in response to an internet search query that's different than how Google does it.
So Yelp is a vertical search engine, and that's distinct from general search in that there's a geographic coefficient. So if I search for dentistry on Google, Google has the challenge of returning relevant content for the person looking for dental school or the history of dentistry, or maybe they've got a toothache and they're looking for a dentist. If I do a search for dentist in Provo on Yelp, that's a very specific type of search, and we know that person's looking for a local business. Yelp,
not a ton of results. I don't know why, but we have a ton of dentists in Provo.
Yelp, not unlike Google, surfaces ads, and that's not what I don't think that's what we're discussing today. I think people should have the right to run advertisements, but unlike Google, and like Google, we also surface organic results. But unlike Google, we do not surface this distinct third category of information, which is an answer box where we're steering people to, the dentist that is on Yelp's payroll. Or
that's what differentiates your results from theirs, separate from your structure, your vertical search structure. Right. Yours are differentiated in that you have sponsored ad search results, and then you have non-sponsored ones, but not the third category of this answer box.
That's correct, sir.
By the way, what percentage of Yelp's overall traffic, including what you get from your mobile app, does Google account for?
If you include the mobile app, I think that gets a bit trickier because there are many times people Google is one of the key ways, if not the key way, that people discover services, third-party services like Yelp and TripAdvisor and others, and then ultimately download the app. So to bring that in somewhat muddies the calculation. I don't know the exact number in the last month or so, but I think we're still about 80% of web traffic is that comes to Yelp comes through Google. And sometimes it's navigational search, people who have already decided that they want to go to Yelp and they're almost using Google as they're typing into the search, dentist Provo and the word Yelp. And sometimes they've never heard of Yelp before and they're discovering Yelp through Google. But increasingly that is becoming more difficult because most people are doing these searches on smartphones. The majority of smartphone search these days is local search, and the majority of those local search results served up on smartphones are being siphoned into this walled garden, so to speak, this sort of Google ecosystem.
By the way, that percentage that you referred to, and I understand why that's an elusive number to identify, has that number increased? Has it waxed or waned over the last few years?
It's been relatively stable, but the number sort of to keep your eye on in terms of understanding the impact of this conduct on the market is number one, how many total search result pages have been generated since the last time we had this hearing, or 2004 when Google was a pure turnstile, and what percentage of clicks are going into Google's secondary products versus going to the web. And within the last 6 months or so, according to very high quality third-party data, there's been a tipping point. That today, so if you imagine about 15 years ago, virtually 100% of traffic going to Google was diffused out onto the web, and that was unlocked all this innovation and investment. Today, the majority of traffic going to Google either stays on Google or either terminates on Google or goes to Google secondary pages. And so you think about the slope of growth of Google's own products relative to the slope of growth of the web itself. That's where you're seeing that type of foreclosure effect.
Interesting. Thank you.